Hi everyone, my name is Ted, and this is a video of my experience with the Blackberry Key 2, a phone that was done dirty by influencers, as Laura Ingraham would say, should have just shut up and just opened boxes. The Key 2 will be the last BlackBerry that will be made by TCL, meaning we won't know the next time a BlackBerry will come to the market. I've used the BlackBerry Key 2 for a little over a year now as my daily driver. And I want to make clear what this video is. This video is about my experience using the BlackBerry Key 2. I wouldn't call it a review because reviews mean something. To me, review means I've studied and tested the phone and I have empirical data based on benchmarks and laboratory tests based on its battery performance. I'm not ready to go that deep. Or reviewers will just give you all the information about a device so that viewers like you can just make an informed buying decision. I'm just gonna share all my experiences that I've experienced with the device. The point of this whole disclaimer is that I can feel lazy without any guilt about calling this review when it's not really a review. But if you guys, like I said, I've had the phone over a year. If you guys have any questions about the device that was not covered in this video, feel free to ask me in the comments below. The display on the BlackBerry Key 2 is obviously not your standard aspect ratio. It's an IPS LCD panel with, I believe, 434 ppi. But again, the standout thing you'll notice is that weird aspect ratio. Makes watching videos very weird. You wouldn't watch videos holding the phone vertically, but horizontally, which again, still feels weird. I tried to stay away from watching videos on the BlackBerry Key 2, and I tried to limit my consumption just reading articles, emails, and stuff off my pocket on the BlackBerry Key 2. Otherwise, the IPS panel is very good. Full visibility at any corners, sufficiently bright in daylight even. An interesting thing to note about the display of the BlackBerry Key 2 is that the display is made from Gorilla Glass 3 and not Gorilla Glass 5 like you normally see on smartphones. And what that means is that the display of the BlackBerry Key 2 is rated better for scratches than it is for drop protection. Because of this, I did not put a glass screen protector on the Key 2, which is a rarity for me. Saying all that though, in real life, I dropped the BlackBerry Key 2 a number of times from about 5 feet and it did not break. So that's a credit to its construction. However, my Key 2 did have scratches across the screen. I guess they were micro scratches. You couldn't feel them. You couldn't see them if the screen was on, but if the screen was off and you catch it in the sunlight, scratches galore. So what do I know about this whole Gorilla Glass thing? Yeah. On the performance of the Key 2, the chipset it uses was a Snapdragon 660, which was supposed to be a fix and an upgrade from the original Key 1, which had the 626 processor. And my experience using the 660 processor was great. I was never left wanting. I didn't really notice any stuttering or lags. The only knock I can give on it was when I played certain games, the Rain series that I played on the Key 2, the device got hot. I don't really know what that was about, but yeah, in terms of actual processor intensive tasks, playing Reigns was the most intensive thing that I did. Nothing really to tell. With a 660 processor, I could record in 4K, but not 4K 60. But I didn't really use a BlackBerry for its camera performance, and I will talk about that later. Another thing to note on the performance was that the device came with 6 gigabytes of RAM, and using the device, it certainly did use the 6 gigabytes of RAM because it was able to keep things in the memory for a while. I was often mindful of the large 6 gigabytes of RAM. The system would often give me a warning like, hey, you're about to run out of RAM. And I would actually notice that I actually have like 100 megabytes of RAM left. But I was still like close stuff prematurely, but I didn't have to. And I just want to point out the fact that I was still running the stock launcher from BlackBerry, and that launcher takes up 300 megabytes of RAM. 330 megabytes of RAM. And the reason why I used that launcher was because I could use the keyboard shortcuts with just one button press. Usually launchers take a whole lot less, like 50 megabytes or so. So if I had just, removed that launcher, I wouldn't have any RAM issues at all to even like think about. And I guess I didn't have any at all, to be honest. I just still got the warnings of RAM. But in terms of performance, again, and the RAM, was never really left wanting or noticed any bothering stutters or lags. First, let me talk about the design of the Key 2. Personally, I felt that the Key 1 looks way nicer in design than the Key 2. The back, the front, the sides, the top, all looks better than the Key 2 in my opinion. The Key 2 seemed to double down on the utilitarian industrial look. I will say, holding the phone tightly in my hand, it was uncomfortable for me. I would hurt my hand holding it, grasping it too securely. Woe is me. Or one advantage in terms of look and functionality that the Key 2 did have over the Key 1 is the keyboard. The Key 2 has like a matte feel and a matte look keyboard than the Key 2's like glossy look. And also I could just be biased to like phones with rounded edges, I guess, but again, the Key 1 just looked nicer. Even that camera hump. In fact, if you see a Blackberry nowadays in a Hollywood movie or even in that show Space Force, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the Key 1 that you see in theaters. It's just the phone that the camera loves. And I love in terms of design. To focus on the design of the Key 2, there were some things that it had going for it was the button placement. The buttons were all on one side. They were all manufactured to perfection. No button wiggling. The convenience key by TCL was placed in a very great position. The texture button of the power button was also fantastic. In terms of calls, during this quarantine period, that phone was great. I mean, I could just press the convenience key to mute a call and then press the power button to hang up the call. It's having a mute switch, a hardware mute switch for calls is great. You can just multitask so much easier. The back of the Key 2, I don't know whether I don't think that was Kevlar. It was a rubber texture. Also great. They didn't have wireless charging, but I don't really care about wireless charging, to be honest. It kills your battery health. Also, headphone jack, which I wish was on the bottom, but it was on the top. Also fine. And really the only knock I can give on the design, the bottom firing speaker, that was the only knock on the design I could give the Blackberry Key 2. Otherwise, the Blackberry Key 2 felt really premium and it could withstand a beating. Again, I dropped that phone like 4 times, chest height, and the screen never broke. All it did was have knocks on the bottom of the screen. So great job, Blackberry, or should I say TCL. Great job, TCL. The camera on the Blackberry, on the Key 2. Well, let me just go out and say the Key 2 has the best camera to date that Blackberry ever put on a phone, for whatever that's worth. You get a front-facing camera that will oversaturate the hell out of skin tones. And then you have 2 camera sensors in the back. One telephoto that will not work if you're in a low light situations. I mean, Blackberry will just crop in the main sensor, as most smartphone manufacturers will do. In terms of image quality, I wish the image quality on the Blackberry Key 2 was better. Or at the very least, give me 1 camera sensor and charge me cheaper for the listing price. With having the dual sensor in the back, the Blackberry Key 2 did take really good portrait modes. I will give it that much. Again, I did wish the image quality on the Key 2 was better because the camera UI was fantastic. Good job, Blackberry. I played with a lot of smartphone camera apps. While the image quality was great, the camera app was all over the place. The Blackberry Key 2 was very simple, very upfront, and it was this way because of on-screen toggles. There's probably some of you guys that don't like, a lot of toggles on your viewfinder. You just want to focus on the image you're taking a picture of. If that's the case, you won't like what, the Blackberry's approach on this. But Blackberry had toggles, useful toggles that you could easily simply press, change your image, or switch modes. And because of that, you only had to go to the settings for very specific things. And another thing BlackBerry did great in terms of the camera user experience was how they implemented manual mode. Another thing I wish they had done was adding raw capture, but otherwise, great camera app. I just wish it was better camera quality, picture quality. The experience the BlackBerry Key 2 provided me was based off two things: its keyboard and its software. And let me speak on the keyboard. With the Key 2, BlackBerry had this had a matte finish on it, and typing on a keyboard, I was never faster than, swiping on a glass sandwich phone that like I normally do. However, I was a hell of a lot more accurate. And also, I was happy typing on those keys. However, if I was typing something that was long content, like if I had to do 30 minutes of typing, I'm going to be honest and say I don't think I would have liked to have done it on the Key tool, like, just putting work on my thumbs like that. In fact, I don't even think I would have liked to have done it on any phone. But, if I had to do like long piece writing for 30 minutes to an hour, I think I probably would have switched over to a glass sandwich phone in that case. But, for what I normally do on the BlackBerry Key 2 in terms of the tweets, the text, instant messaging stuff, or, drafting an email, that is the BlackBerry Key 2 keyboard was great. And what I mainly loved about it was the shortcuts. On the BlackBerry Key 2, 28 keys on that device are customizable. You can press them to do a shortcut. There are 28 keys on the BlackBerry keyboard that can give you 2 shortcuts. What's the math on that? 56? Is that 56 shortcuts? That's not even counting the convenience key on the side, which can program you to do how many number of functions, based on what profile you do with that thing. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I did not have over 50 actions. I probably had like 30 actions customizable based on those keyboards, and it was pretty clutch. The only thing I would complain about was the currency key. I wish that was programmed in a way so that, if I was in a certain app or if I was typing something, I could use that to bring down the notification shade, and then, when I'm typing something in typing mode, that can give me like, currencies. But otherwise, the shortcuts were pretty clutch. And, in terms of shortcuts, I'm talking about, shortcuts where tap this button, you open up an app, long press it, you can do a shortcut. It's really up to your imagination what you can customize on the Key 2 for your convenience. Another cool thing was like if you took a picture with your spacebar, the picture would quickly go discreetly into your Vault app or Locker app, and where it was under lock and key. Speaking of spacebar, that also doubled as a fingerprint scanner, and the fingerprint scanner on the BlackBerry Key 2 was not the best, not so good. It pretty much gave me the vibes of fingerprint scanners from 2017, if not 2016 even. But on the subject of fingerprint scanners, security. That's another thing the BlackBerry Key 2 gave its users, mostly through the Detect software app. And that is a pretty great feature that I wish would be implemented by other smartphone manufacturers. With the Detect app, it would scan the phone routinely to see if there are any malware on the device. And more importantly, it would also list out the permissions each app used and how often it used those features. When was the last time it used those permissions? When it used those permissions. And the only other app that does something like this is Bouncer, but the Detect app did it so much better. This is where the security chops of the device are. And by this extension, your BlackBerry Key 2 would be much more secure. Also, since I've had the Key 2 over a year, it hasn't been late on a security update. So go Key 2. Also in terms of security, the phone also had a nifty privacy shade tool that you can just toggle on and nobody else could, peek over your shoulder and read what you're reading, which was pretty handy. Also pretty cool was its power center app, which controlled its power an app can draw. On the subject of power, the BlackBerry Key 2 has a 3500 milliamp hour battery, and while reviewers As said, they had great battery life on the Key 2. I just had okay battery life. Often in my commuting to and fro work, I would wake up at 6 a.m. and by the time I arrived at work at 8 a.m., I would be at 80% battery life. And that's after, reading emails, watching videos, reading articles, maybe listening to a podcast. But in that 2 hour period, I would get, 20% battery drain. And depending on the workday, I would usually have to charge it during work in that 8 hour period in order for it to survive the commute back, which would take another 20% battery life. In terms of support for the device, like I already said, the TCL says this phone will get updates until 2021, security updates until 2021, and it hasn't been late on security updates. I should tell you that, while I've been using this device, a common feature with the Blackberry Key 2 is that its spacebar is starting to go out. And on my device, the right side of the device was starting to go out. So I contacted Blackberry, and unfortunately, because the device I have is Canadian, not American, they would not help me at all. Like, they didn't want to charge me for the repairs. They were like, no, we can't help you. Your device is Canadian. The app also has a support center app where you can also contact support, and you can also run diagnostics there and give feedback with manufacturers, and it's done really well. And every manufacturer should have that. But yeah, to touch on support, there is support. Whether or not they will help you, I cannot guarantee such things. But there is support for it. There was support that I knew how to contact, and they did get back to me when I contacted them. Now, overall, who is this device for? Questions reviewers aim to ask. I would say the Blackberry Key 2 is for those people who love keyboards, physical keyboards on their phones. I remember reading an article one time that, Kim Kardashian had, was unfortunately sad to give up on Blackberries because she couldn't find any more to use, and she was now switching over to iPhones. Well, women, people like her, that are just looking for those physical keyboards. The Blackberry Key 2 is the best on the market. The only other phone I heard that does such a thing is called this Umi Digihertz. Blackberry does it better than them. Another group of people who would love the Blackberry Key 2 are those who care about security. Again, by its very nature, thanks to the Detect security app, I would trust this phone way more than any other phone, even iPhones, in terms of actually holding on to someone's sensitive data. Like, if my doctor had a Blackberry Key 2, I'd be more comfortable. My banker, my accountant, if I saw them with Blackberry Key 2s, I would like the look of that, rather than some Samsung device that everyone knows how to hack to and fro. And people who do calls, I get that mute and hang up feature with the convenience key and the power button is pretty clutch. So if you love doing the calls, like talking on the phone, Blackberry Key 2 is a great phone. I can easily tell you though who the phone is not for. It's not for the content creators, content consumers, and the Visco girls and guys. Personally, things I didn't like about the phone. Things I didn't like about the Blackberry Key 2, there are not many things. It was a great device, and I'm sorry to have just sold it now. Maybe someday it'll come back to me. But screenshots, I didn't like how it did screenshots. I would take a screenshot and it would bring me over to this Notable app, and then I would have to click to save it and all that. It was just too convoluted. But otherwise, it was great. I remember the Blackberry Key 2 sold for around $650, and at that time, I was thinking, that's too much money for a phone that's not a Snapdragon, 835 processor or 845 processor, whatever was used that day. But using it now, even with the cheapskate that I am, it was worth that money. Everything was great about the device, except the cameras. But whoever went to Blackberries for their cameras. But I was glad to have been able to purchase the device for around $300. And if you are the type of person, like I mentioned, that loves to type on stuff, or need something that's more secure, you should definitely consider the Blackberry Key 2 until 2021. But that's all, folks. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. But this has been my video on the Blackberry Key 2 that I just sold. So long, BlackBerry.